You're listening to Graphic Novel Explorers Club podcast, an audiobook club.
Graphic Novel Explorers Club is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever podcasts are available.
Hello, this is Graphic Novel Explorers Club, and we're kicking off Season 2, and we're so honored to be at the Crocker Art Museum recording live at the Crocker Con. Tonight, we're going to be discussing A Tale of Batman, Gotham by Gaslight. I'm one of your hosts, Francis Preziosi. I am joined to my right by...
Dennis Supatrana.
And to my left...
Peter Venkman.
And just so you know, listeners, they are dressed as Ghostbusters. I just came as a basic bee. That's my everyday costume.
You're Janine.
Okay.
I keep telling you're Janine.
Yeah.
And quit looking at me with the bug eyes. Janine, sorry about the bug eyes comment. All right, let's get into this. Okay, so we're reading Batman Gotham by Gaslight, even though I kept writing down Gotham by Gaslamp. I don't know why, but I kept doing that. This book was written by Brian Augustine and illustrated by Michael Mignola, who for some reason gets more credit than the writer.
Well, to be fair, Michael was the creator of Hellboy, so
but not the creator of this comic book.
Right, but if you're going to sell a comic book, you probably put the more well-known name.
I guess.
I think it was like 5 years later he actually released the Hellboy series, and eventually other spin-offs with Dark Horse Comics.
BPRD, right?
BPD.
I thought
RD.
Yeah.
Right.
I know what I'm talking about. All right, let's get into this. Enough jibber jabber. Okay, so this Batman story is set during the late 19th century, and it starts off with a letter written by Jack the Ripper to the police, possibly the press. I wasn't really sure.
By the way, the actual letter itself was written by Robert Bloch, who was the author of Psycho, also known for doing Jack the Ripper novels. Little like pulp novels, and he wrote the Jack the Ripper-esque story for Star Trek: The Next Generation. So by having him actually write that letter from Jack the Ripper was kind of adding an air of legitimacy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Whole. Yeah.
Oh man,
that's what happens when you do research, Johnny.
I don't remember the Jack the Ripper episode of TNG.
That's not TNG, but the original series. So we're talking where Scotty gets framed for killing a woman, and it turns out that actually was the spirit of Jack the Ripper. It's like some alien ghost. It was a pretty good episode.
I don't remember that one at all. All right. So this starts off with a letter from Jack the Ripper to the police, possibly the press. He's toying with whoever the letter was intended to receive. And he also includes that he wants to go to Gotham basically to fight or face off against Batman. He thinks he's bested Scotland Yard, so am I wrong there?
No, you got it.
Okay, all right.
Does he say he wants to see Batman in the letter?
Basically, he doesn't think that Batman's much of a threat.
Yeah.
He talks about Batman at the end.
And he wants to go to Gotham to...
Oh, that's right.
Although that kind of conflicts with why Jack goes to Gotham, really.
Well, and it says, too, that some people think he's a medical student or like a doctor or a policeman, and that kind of plays into it a little bit later, too.
Yeah. Okay, so we are then shown Bruce Wayne's parents, Martha and Thomas, being killed by a brigand, to use the term that's used in the book. I don't know what I'm trying to say. And then a gaggle or a murder or a flock of bats, I don't know what you call a group of bats, sweep in and distract the killer before he can kill Bruce, and he narrowly escapes being killed along with his parents.
Right. I forgot if we emphasize this or not, but basically this is a steampunk Victorian age retelling of Batman. So basically
I think it's pre-steampunk. I don't think like steampunk was a term yet.
It wasn't a term until later, but basically it was that kind of, I don't know, motif, the whole Jules Verne kind of thing. So
yeah, I was confused because last season 1, we read The Killing Joke, and it shows Batman's parents being killed in an alley on the way from like the theater, and I was like, wait, what? And then I realized, it's like an alternate
Right.
universe.
Well, I guess I should speak to this too. We didn't talk about it, but this is one of the first Elseworld comic books. So basically, it's an imprint by DC where they tell alternate histories of characters. They've had something like this before. I forgot it was called Amazing Stories or something like that. Marvel has their What If.
Shit that happened in other...
Basically.
That was the old title.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit that also happened.
So it's a different telling of a story. And so this is one of the first comics that got the Elseworld sort of imprint for DC. So but if you're not a nerd, you wouldn't know that.
Yeah. Or if you've ever had sexual intercourse. Yeah, I used a proper term because we're recording live.
You know I have children, right?
Do you?
It's true. You've never met them.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have DNA tests? So then we cut to 1889. Bruce Wayne is an adult in Vienna where he's speaking with a doctor, I'm assuming.
Dr. Freud.
Siggy Freud.
Yep.
And about his dreams and the trauma that he suffered as a child with the death of his parents. And it seems like Siggy wants to get more in depth. I got the impression like he could tell something was there.
Well, Freud could pretty much pick up that Bruce Wayne is pretty effed up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say so.
So then it's Bruce Wayne tells him like he's heading to London where he's going to depart back to Gotham. And when he arrives in England, Bruce bumps into an old acquaintance, which is his uncle Jake.
Not actually related to him, just a family friend.
He's a family friend, not a blood relative. And we'll get into, I spoiled this book looking up who he was. I wanted to see who he was in relation to like the regular timeline.
Right.
And I completely ruined the effing book for me. I said effing.
Okay. You have a potty mouth tonight.
I have a potty mouth all the time.
I know.
Back in Gotham, we see that Bruce is already an established and experienced man.
He's on the boat. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, he's been away from Gotham for a few years. I think maybe 2,
like
5.
Studying.
Yeah, well, as per the lore, he goes away to study with the best detectives or the psychologists in order to become a better Batman.
Not much of a fighter, though, but a better mind pugilist.
Right. More Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, so then as I was saying, back in Gotham, he already has a costume. He's an established Batman, maybe not as well known as like modern day Batman, but the public is aware of him. And we're also the usual characters there, like Jim Gordon, Alfred Pennyworth, the Joker. By way of a newspaper clipping and a photo, and Harvey Dent.
I'm really glad that it didn't become like the Joker was.
That's where
Jack
I thought
the
it was
Ripper.
going to go.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: Joker is not Jack the Ripper. And coincidentally, while Batman is out fighting ne'er-do-wells in the night, Jack the Ripper is now in Gotham and he's killing women at the same time.
Right, so much like modern Batman lore, when he first comes on the scene, people mistake him for an actual man-bat or a vampire, and with the Jack the Ripper killings, they're meshing those together and wondering if Batman is actually responsible for the killings.
And the public is equally frightened of Batman as they are of Jack the Ripper. And then one night, Batman almost stops Jack the Ripper, but Jack narrowly gets away. We also see Jack's blade, which is very narrow and distinct. Mm. It's almost like a thick needle more than a knife. Commissioner Tolliver, who is Jim Gordon's boss, goes to Bruce Wayne's house because he believes Bruce is Jack the Ripper. His reasons are that Bruce's evening activities cannot be accounted for, and that makes him a prime suspect.
And the killings in London had ended, and the killings in Gotham had coincided with Bruce arriving.
With his travels. So Bruce is, or while they're there, so the Commissioner Tolliver and the police go to Bruce's house, and while they're investigating his house, they find a glove and the weapon that Jack the Ripper used, covered in blood. And Bruce, when they first showed up, was like, "Search the house. I got nothing to hide." But little did he know, something was planted. So Bruce is arrested, and there's a trial. The prosecutor is Harvey Dent. Bruce thinks that the case is flimsy, and his uncle Jake represents him. Bruce is convicted.
Well, so he thinks the case is flimsy because there's a woman who seems like she's drunk who testifies that she saw him in the alley killing a woman. Like, they really don't have any witnesses.
That wasn't in my version.
It's in here.
It's not the one I had.
No, it's in there, dude.
No, it's not.
I think you just didn't read it. Like, I mean, 'cause they do go to the trial for a few days, and during this point, it's important to point out, Alfred the butler asks him, "Hey, just say that who you are. Like, maybe you should tell him that you're Batman." And he said, "I thought about that, but the risk of doing that is too great. You know, I don't think this trial is going to go anywhere. They have no evidence. I'm going to get freed." And there was another reason why he didn't want to say he was Batman. I forget.
Because they would think that they were jointly combined.
No, there was another reason. I don't remember at the point. But yeah. So I mean, that is why he thought the trial was flimsy. I'm going to look while you.
Yeah, that's fine. Do it to it. So Bruce is convicted, and while in Arkham Asylum, Jim Gordon brings Bruce the police files that they have on Jack the Ripper, and it seems like, and you, Dennis, you know more about Batman than I think either of us. Mm-hmm. Jim seems to have a real camaraderie and friendship with this version of Bruce because he's bringing him shit that if he was a regular criminal, he wouldn't be doing.
I don't think it's really established in this universe, but I think somehow Bruce and Jim might know his family and know how good of a kid Bruce is, which is similar to the main universe as well.
All right.
Sorry, you were right. He thought if he revealed that he was Batman, people would think he was insane, and then therefore possibly Jack the Ripper as well.
Yeah.
Another thing, too, Batman doesn't just want to free himself. He knows the killer's loose and is going to kill again.
Right. I think did you gloss over the fact that Batman actually did confront Jack the Ripper?
I said that. Oh, okay. He almost caught him, but Jack got away.
Right.
Because he threw a box at him. Right. That's what I was saying. Like this version of Batman's not very athletic. He got tripped up by a box. So Bruce reads over the files, and he's going to be executed, and he's trying to figure out what's going on because his execution is just a matter of days away. He eventually discovers that the knife the killer used bears the same insignia, a letter A with a circle around it.
That's a really big word.
What?
Insignia. That was good.
I had to look it up.
Okay.
So
he asked me how to pronounce it too.
It's a letter A with a circle around it, and that's the same emblem that was used.
gmail.com. It is.
Is it? No.
Oh no, because it's a capital A.
Yeah,
Continue.
It's a capital A. Yeah, it's not. Just sit back. Dennis and I are going to manage this.
No.
I didn't say that.
And this insignia was the same one used on Bruce's father's Civil War regimental flags. So then he realizes, I know who the killer is.
Right. Most of the men in the photo are dead.
Yeah.
Including his dad, except for one.
Yep.
And it turns out.
Well, we'll get to that. So
dun,
Bruce
dun, dun.
Bruce escapes prison because Alfred switches places with him. And I think that's kind of messed up because his execution's like a mere day or two away. So what if he didn't solve...
There's a lot of problems I have with that, but yeah, we can get into it.
He catches up with Jack the Ripper as he's about to kill another woman. And
because the thirst that Jack the Ripper is feeling right now, he's holding back until they kill Batman, until he can kill again, because he knows if he kills, they'll know Batman is innocent.
Or Bruce.
Sorry, Bruce. Yeah, but he says that they're gonna hang him in the morning. I can do it. Like they'll find the body too late.
Yeah.
So he's been like itching to silence the laughter. That's what he keeps saying throughout the book. He says she's following me. She's laughing at me. I need to silence her.
Yeah. There's a few times when you see from Jack's perspective.
And that's going to play an important role later.
Yes. And
so Batman finds him, sorry.
Oh, yeah. So Batman catches up with Jack the Ripper, and it is revealed that Jack is none other than Bruce's Uncle Jake. And then we see why Jake has been killing women. He's obsessed with Martha Wayne, Bruce's mother.
Well, yeah, he's had this weird class thing going on, right? So... he felt like Thomas Wayne basically helped educate him after the war, made him a lawyer, threw business at him, but he didn't deserve it.
Not only that, he flunked out of med school, and Thomas Wayne was kind enough to like send him. You need a trade. Let's send you to law school, and paid for his housing and his school.
But despite all that, Packard still envied Thomas Wayne's life, including his wife. He says that he confessed to Martha that he loved her, and then she laughed at him, which I don't think is actually accurate, unreliable narrator, because then he basically kind of implied that the whole family was laughing at him. Like even Thomas Wayne was kind of.
Well, even the thing
Oh,
that
he said that Martha told Thomas, and even though Thomas didn't say anything to him, he knows that they were all laughing at
Yeah,
him behind
right,
his back.
exactly.
and the other twisted thing that he had in his mind was that Thomas had everything. He couldn't just give me one thing. I was like, dude, he's giving you
Right, so he's clearly
he's giving
delusional.
you a
Right.
professional life. Like
Right.
he's giving you a status you would not have had without his help.
So apparently he transfers the whole Martha obsession to every woman, and then he hears them laughing at him.
That's most single guys. They do that.
I wouldn't know. I'm married.
And he also made him. Thomas made Jake the sole solicitor. Basically, he repped the Wayne family, so you
Right.
know he was making a lot of money. He was throwing businesses away, and
So who did you find out he was in the main universe?
he's not. He's not in the main universe.
Oh.
So I looked up. I was like, "Who's Jake Parrish or whatever his name? Jacob whatever." And so I went to there was no regular Wikipedia page for him. It was the DC Wikipedia page. So I clicked on it, and it instantly goes, he's his uncle by friendship, and he's Jack the Ripper. I was like, God dang it! Like,
Well,
I
we'll just wrap it up
ruined-
really quick. The story that he
Yeah.
confronts him, and then the police come, and then
So yeah, Bruce, he corners Jake, and Jake reveals that he killed a hired man, or he hired a man to kill Martha and her family, but the son got away. And he continues saying he framed her son Bruce for the murders of these women because he wants to destroy the Wayne name.
No, he thought that the son was dead. Bruce reveals that he wasn't dead.
No, he knew Bruce Wayne was alive. That's why
No,
he planted.
he didn't.
well, I thought he did because he's been
He
with him.
planted the stuff in his house, and he saw him in England. He knew Bruce was alive.
Yeah,
He's revealing to Batman.
He defended Bruce in the
No, because
trial.
he even says here, he's like Bruce. He's like didn't know Bruce.
Didn't
He's
know
like-
that Bruce
was
and
Batman.
Batman were the same.
Yeah, that's
Oh, so he was just setting up Bruce.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought he didn't know.
He was the lawyer
Bruce was alive.
that defended
Yeah.
Bruce
Okay.
Yeah.
badly.
Yeah,
he
got
didn't.
you.
That's what I was getting to. So Bruce revealed as he's confessing all these murders to.
Wait, so he's the lawyer too?
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
God,
I
did
read
you guys? Did I not? Was I the only one who
Sorry.
read the book?
I read this on a plane at like 4 a.m.
Hungover.
and it's boring.
Yeah.
It's not boring. I have problems with
So-
it, but
Okay,
yeah.
I got you. I'm following now. It's a little bit better now.
So Bruce reveals himself to Jake as being Batman, and Jake asks Bruce to kill him, and it seems like Bruce Wayne is contemplating like, okay, maybe I need to, because one of the things I thought was like, oh well, now this guy knows he's
Batman.
So at that particular time, Jim Gordon and the rest of the police show up, and they draw guns on everyone. And Jake confesses to the police that he is Jack the Ripper and killed all those women in Gotham and England, and even some in Paris that no one had connected to Jack the Ripper. And then at that moment, he pulls a knife out and says, "Yours truly, Jack the Ripper," and cuts Bruce. And then Jim Gordon shoots and kills Jake, and his body hits the tombstone for the Wayne parents, and blood leaks all over it. So I just thought like it was like that's the tragedy of it represented to me, not just in this universe but in all the DC universes, that the tragedy always falls on that family.
Right, the Waynes.
Yeah,
right.
the Waynes.
Not the Wayans.
Yes, Marlon and SW1. So then they want to take both of them in, and Bruce kind of
Jets out like he normally does.
Yeah, just escapes, and then Gordon realizes like, oh, we're probably gonna need someone like Batman in Gotham City, and then that's pretty much it. The book ends.
The book doesn't end. There's actually
yeah.
a second part that I read.
Years
I read
later.
too.
And Francis read.
Yeah,
Not
years
years
later.
later, like 3 years later.
That's years later.
18 months later, actually. But regardless, we'll talk about this one first. So what did you think, Johnny?
This pretty much a couple things. I like that the writer used the word brigand to describe the murderer. I thought that was
Okay.
So I'm gonna start bringing brigand back when
Okay.
I see people
I'm
committing
bringing
crimes.
Brigand back.
Yep. Two things. I read this. It was my first digital comic, and I hated it with all my guts. Hated it.
Why did you hate digital?
For a couple reasons. One, hitting an arrow or hitting the mouse to move the page forward, didn't like it.
Did you know you could do full page?
Yes, I did. I even set it up where I could do 2 pages. And I did not like that experience. I didn't like that I could just flip back to something real easily to look up a reference or to say like, oh, well, was there foreshadowing on this? Really didn't like that. I just didn't like the experience at all of reading a digital comic.
Well, not to go too much on a tangent, but I will sort of agree with you that digital comics lack sort of the heart that normal comics have, although the convenience factor is huge. I tend to buy comics twice, both in physical format because I like flipping through the comics, but having them digitally just makes the ability to read them on the go so much easier.
Was it cheaper?
It's not necessarily
No,
cheaper.
Sometimes
Sometimes the same
equal.
price.
Yeah, it was like
Oh.
$12.99, $13.
But I mean, I was able on vacation to just pull up any comic that I had as long as I had an internet connection.
Oh, that's nice.
You could put them in your backpack.
You know how many comics that is?
But the other reason I really wanted to buy it in physical form is I like to shop at our local
Absolutely.
bookshops, and I wasn't able to support a local bookshop because over the span of a week, every bookstore I went to or bookshop I went to, I missed by a day or sometimes 2 customers purchasing this. Like,
Yeah. When I called Big Brother Comics, shout out to Kenny Vanderpool, they had to look for it, and I think I got the last one. So I could see how a digital book might be much more convenient because you don't have to call around, drive around, shop around. But there is something about the physical aspect and flipping the pages. And I think, too, the colors are more accurate in print. When you
Very
go
true.
on digital, it's not the same.
yeah.
Plus, you can lend it to a friend, which you can't necessarily
Yeah.
do with the digital.
My other 2 things, pretty much this book solidifies my dislike of capes and cowls. Like it cemented it because, especially for Batman, like how many times do we need to hear the origin story of Batman? Like I'm just sick of the origin story. And how many times does Gotham need to learn to trust Batman? It's just been done to death, and I'm kind of over it. And then, and this is more of a philosophical thing. Do you think Bruce Wayne and the rest of the characters are trapped in hell, and where there's multiple realities happening, and the characters are aware of their other selves, and we just read it as fiction, but they're really just trapped in hell?
I think you're thinking of American Horror Story. That's a synopsis. That's an interesting theory. No, I don't think that.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
That's it. And then, and then one more thing. Do you think 100 years from now that there will be a Batman book similar to this, but the villains will be maybe Ted Kaczynski or Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy?
Or Time Warner because they stole all the news.
What?
Yeah,
What?
that's the big villain, not the serial killers.
All right, Francis, what do you think of the book? Well,
Yeah.
this part.
So this part, I actually liked it. It's very dark overall. It's extremely dark. The imagery, the coloring, it did remind me a lot of The Killing Joke. When Batman is in prison, you see him start to go crazy. There's one close-up of his face where he almost looks like Wolverine. Like he's just, you see him not in control. You see him powerless, and I haven't seen him that way before. I thought it was an interesting take on Jack the Ripper because I've always found that story very fascinating, sadly, like not grossly, but I thought the way they tied it in was actually pretty good. But overall, I mean, I'm just not a huge Batman fan to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think, too, another thing that I liked about this book, I think this could be a really good gateway book, if you will. If you're not really into comics or not sure, this is kind of why comics, the genre was created, right? It's an easy, fun read. There's these characters that you know and these alternative universes, and it doesn't get too deep, and you kind of want to see the good man win and the bad man die, and that always delivers, I believe. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
I really like the comic myself. It's one of my favorite Elseworld comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I understand your point, Johnny, though, about the retelling of Bruce's tragedy, essentially. But that's the problem with this book because it has to retell it in the Victorian sense.
Yeah.
So they have to kind of rehash how it happened in that area. I was kind of disappointed by the main villain of the first book, only because I felt it was kind of weak for him to ultimately be just a family friend. There's so many more, if you look at Jack the Ripper theories, there's so many more better. There are so many more appropriate villains to pick. For instance, there was an individual who's believed to be Jack the Ripper, who was an American. I wonder if they got inspiration from this. He was potentially visiting London at the time and then came back to Chicago, which Gotham is essentially that. And his name was H.H. Holmes, and he built what was known as the Murder Hotel. And the hotel was a multi-level hotel, and it had a business on the bottom, something else in the middle, and on the top floor was these rooms. It was kind of like the Winchester Mystery House. So it had rooms that had weird gas pipes, peepholes, trap doors.
Is this real?
This is real.
Oh, okay.
You can look up the Chicago Murder Hotel or Murder House, and then
James Woods' house,
right? Or my address, whatever. And then the basement had there was a chute to the basement that was greased. The basement had a dissecting table, a vat of acid. What he called a elasticity maker, I think it was. Basically, he believed he could make a race of giants by stretching people.
Oh my God!
So this was an actual person who lived in Chicago. He confessed to 28 murders. He's believed to perhaps have murdered 200 individuals at this murder hotel. He basically set it up near the World's Fair, which was in Chicago, 1893, and which also is more reason why Gotham is probably Chicago, because the next story, which you didn't read, takes place at the World's Fair at Gotham.
Nice segue.
Anyway, so I felt he would have been a more appropriate villain. I mean, he seems more horrific than basically this guy who was forlorn for Martha Wayne.
I almost got excited to think it was the Joker, and then it wasn't. I was like, okay, it's kind of nice. It's not so obvious.
And he kind of goes down like a chump. So
yeah,
he just gives up.
Yeah, basically. So I like the story, but yeah, the villain's kind of weak.
Yeah. Well, once again, it's been a huge pleasure to be here at the Crocker Con of 2017 at Crocker Art Museum. We're going to wrap up now, but Johnny, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Serious Talk Twit, and my Instagram, I don't know what it is.
It's Serious Talk, I think.
Serious Talk Johnny, maybe?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Dennis, where can people find you?
Our Twitter handle is at GN Explorers Club, and Instagram at GN Explorers Club as well.
And Francis, where can people follow you?
Oh, yeah.
At the bar. Words and Waffles on Instagram. And you can also listen to Graphic Novel Explorers Club on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever podcasts are found. We thank you so much for listening. And if you want to tweet us or Facebook us and tell us what you thought about Gotham by Gaslight, if you've read it, if you liked it, if you're over Batman as much as I am.
And me.
Yeah.
Not me. I love Batman.
Not Johnny. You don't love Johnny.
No, I don't love Johnny.
But
That's
we'd
true.
love to hear your thoughts.
I do love his dog, though.
Yeah. And I'd also like to say thank you to Edwin Burgoon for he curated the CrockerCon event. So thank you for having us out. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone, staff and volunteers with the Crocker Art Museum for putting this gala on and having us out to talk at it.
And everyone who came by our booth and said hi.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Are we done? Are we over?
Are we done?
Is this live?
Thank you for listening to Graphic Novel Explorers Club. Next week, we will be discussing The Legend of Luther Strode by Justin Jordan. So we will see you next week.
Hello. Nope. Okay.